Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the 6321.099.kit lock hub assembly, 2.5-inch single hub. What this means is this is a package of parts that will allow you to convert what would be a knob strength mortise case into a lever strength mortise case. Baldwin has different, as do other manufacturers, Baldwin has different lock bodies dependent on whether it be knob trim or lever trim. You need to have the right lock body. Now you can use a knob trim on a lever strength mortise lock, but you will notice that it takes additional force to rotate that. And you can use a lever on a knob strength, but you're going to notice that that lever doesn't retract all the way back up. And the real problem with that is that when your lever doesn't come all the way back up, your latch bolt doesn't come fully extended. Okay, so you don't ever want to use one in the inappropriate application. Levers with knob cases, knobs with lever cases that just don't work. One is bad, the other is awful because your lock won't work right. So these are the parts that you will need to do that. This is going to include installation instructions, and they are linked to down below. I don't have a lock case here to demonstrate all of this. At some point in the future, when I do, I will add a second video. Let's switch to the screen view and let's take a closer look at the supporting information. If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now, let's get back to it. Okay, so here is what we are indeed looking at. In terms of looking, let's take a look at some actual photographs we have. There's the package, the contents, and then just a couple of different perspectives on the parts. Now let's take a look at the installation instructions, and they are linked down below here, so it won't be too big of a deal to be able to review those. 6321, okay. Remove the old parts. You're going to pull out the lock hub assembly. You're going to remove the hub lever and spring and discard. Never throw any of these parts away. Put them in a box. You never know when a $5 or 50-cent spring is going to disable a $200 mortise lock. So that's what you're pulling out. Remove lock hub assembly and discard. Remove hub lever and with spring and discard. This has a different shape than our hub lever, if you recall. Like I said, hang on to those parts. I have a box of Baldwin parts here from various projects. It's nice to be able to pull one out. Add the new parts. You're adding this bushing, the lock hub assembly with its spring, and then the hub lever and spring. Install spring spacer over this post. Yeah, there is a bushing. I call it a bushing. They call it a spring spacer. So it's a spring spacer. I'm going to guess that this should be number 2. Install the hub lever spring into the middle cut in the hub lever. Yeah, so the hub lever itself, what they're saying is cut. It's cut inside of here. So put it together like this is, I believe, what they're telling us to do. The curved leg of the spring should be resting against the hub lever. Install the hub lever and spring in the same place the old lever was removed from. Preload the spring against the lock case. Install lock assembly in same place that the old lock hub. Install lock hub assembly where you remove the old one. Be sure the brass bushing is installed with the lock hub. There is a bushing. And that bushing, they may be referring to this. This is a separate component. One spring leg should rest on pin and lock hub during install as shown. Here's your spring they're referring to. Lock hub spring should be preloaded, resting against this post and on top of spring spacer. So this spring here is what's going to push that latch bolt out when the knob is turned in. It's unclear to me if there's a spring involved in here at all, and I'm tempted to say that there is one because there's something clearly shown here. But the bottom line is the spring that we're installing with a lever strength is clearly going to be, it's certainly going to be a spring of greater torsion value. Okay, like I said, you know, when I get, this might be the bushing, when I get a lock case here, I will do this live for someone, but a very rare component for us to sell, that's to be sure. There is a link below this video as seen here, and when you click on that, you'll be able to pull up the manufacturer's page as seen here, where you can view not only all of the Baldwin items that we sell by means of this horizontal navigation, a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the product catalog. Speaking of product catalog, we have one that's about 50 years old sitting here. Well, not quite 50, but 45 for sure. So we've got an old Baldwin catalog here. That's fun to be able to look back in time, so to speak, to see exactly what it is that you are looking at and dealing with. Do some research. It is absolutely not unusual for someone to call us with a Baldwin mortise lock from the late 70s. Those locks still work. And if they stop working, it's probably because of a spring that they've stopped working. But this catalog is extremely helpful in the sense that it helps you identify what you have. And the reason that that's helpful is that it allows you to speak more intelligently to the factory. And I will relate to you now a story about that. If you are enjoying this video, please click thumbs up or like, and also please consider subscribing to our channel. Let's move on to the rest of the video. The story that I have to relate to you about that is I had a client need to order for a customer of theirs in New England 2 mortise locks. Was able to determine that these locks were from the late 1970s, and it's unusual for someone to call and say, yeah, I want to remove all the old and put all the new. That's not unusual in itself. What's unusual to me is how did we arrive at that? Why are we just scrapping everything and replacing it all? Well, for whatever reason, that's what the client had arrived at. Replace it all. Anyway, I got further into the why are you replacing everything? What's the heart of the matter here? Is the trim degraded? Has the lock broken? Is the door and frame damaged? It turns out that on one of the 2 locks, and they were just going to replace both, on one of the 2 locks, a spring was broken. Now, in the world of locks and locksmithing, one of the things that you do all the time is replace springs, and especially mortise locks, and especially those that are several decades old. I said to the client, you know, I'm thrilled to sell you 2 mortise locks, but let me call the factory. It's a long shot, but let me call the factory and say, by any chance, do you have a late 70s vintage such and such spring? And the client had emailed me photographs, and we were able to identify it. I said, sit tight. I'm happy to take your money tomorrow, but let me call the factory first. Called the factory. A person who answers transfers me to one person, which is unusual in the sense that generally the person who answers can answer the question. Sent me over to someone deep in technical support, and the gentleman asked me one question. He says, does that have a blue lock case cover? And it does. It did. He says, I was probably working on the line the day that lock was made, and I can tell you absolutely that the spring we use today is the same one that we used in 1977 or whatever it was. He says, give me the address, I'm going to mail you one out. I says, do me a favor, mail 2, and send it to the client, and we'll see what happens. Long story short, I didn't get the order for 2 mortise locks because the extreme technical competence of Baldwin was able to simply save the client from having to spend all that money. There are levels of decorative hardware. You've got your guys down here, you know, Quickset and grade 3 material. It's all good. It has its place. You've got Schlage, you've got Omnia, M-Tech. Above that, you've got Baldwin, and then above them, you've got boutique material. And as you work up that height, you're going to get into a situation where that cost becomes parabolic. It's not linear. Baldwin, for me, is going to be considered by most people costly. Baldwin, for me, is the one that I choose to personally use because it's a confluence of that technical support. I need a spring to save me a $2,000 replacement cost. And Baldwin has done that over and over and over again. Your Omnias and your MTECs, they're good. They look great. I don't have the same sort of ability to call them up and get a parts drawing and get a part. I don't have the experience based on prior success to say, invest in that material because in 12 years you know that they have your back. I do have that experience with Baldwin. The Schlags and the Quicksets and the Grade 3s, that's all disposable material. And that's, like I said, everything has its place. But for me personally, Baldwin hits that sweet spot of extreme high quality, cost that's potentially still digestible. If you're doing a 1,500 square foot condo or a 4,000 square foot house in Baldwin, as those doors go from 8 to 38, yeah, that cost goes up really quick. So that's on larger homes, I'll see people rethink Baldwin and maybe consider a lower tier. But to me, the ability to get a lock working after 45 years is something to consider. Any questions on the 6321.099.kit or any other Baldwin product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you. Thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up. Please subscribe and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.